Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth.
That which you tax, you get less of. That which you subsidize, you get more of. The fact of the matter, in fact, is that if you were to do a deep dive studying into the United States tax code, which is, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pages long. If you were to deep dive into that, you would discover rather quickly that all those rules that it has are not there to make sure that the tax burden is less painful. They're not there to make sure that it's fair or just. The tax code is written the way it is written precisely because the government understands that what you subsidize, you get more of. What you tax, you get less of. So we have high taxes on tobacco. The government finds that it's a bad thing for us to be using tobacco, and so it wants to discourage its use, especially as it gets more and more involved in the healthcare business. And so it taxes these things. Now, on the opposite side, we have solar power. The government wants us to use solar power, and so it subsidizes this, and we're getting more and more of it. Now, this should not surprise anyone. This is not a complicated thing. We don't need to get out a fancy computer program and simulations to figure this out. It makes perfect sense. The same is true, however, with respect to risk. That which you make riskless, you get less of. And that which you make risky, that which you make riskless, you get more of. That which you make risky, you get less of. One of the chief reasons why foreign investment has lagged behind in the continent of Africa has nothing whatsoever to do with the quality of labor there or the quality of infrastructure there, and everything to do with whether or not the people who would so invest are confident that they're not going to have a revolution in the country that they're investing in and they're going to lose their entire investment. It's happened multiple times where multinational corporations have had their entire businesses simply taken by the government, and that's a risk. And so it makes you a little, risk averse from doing that. Once bitten, twice shy, as the saying goes. Now, all of this is simply to get us to the place where we can talk about the president's consideration of I hope anyway, proposing legislation which would cancel student debt or to a certain level for a certain number of people, etc., etc. And there typically, when this kind of idea gets floated around, there's typically a great deal of discussion, not only about whether or not the idea in general is a good idea or not, but all sorts of nuance in particular as well. We can do it, but we got to do it this way, or we shouldn't do it unless we do it that way. Well, at the end of the day, here's what I want you to understand. When you remove the danger of facing hardship based on your own decisions, you will get more of that risky behavior. I give you as Exhibit A the collapse of the savings and loan industry in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And you'll remember at that time we were experiencing as a nation something we're getting rather close to again, which was double-digit inflation. And if you're old enough, you may also remember that you could get, 15 or 16% interest on your deposits at savings and loans. Well, why was that? Well, here's how it works. The government comes along and says, we're going to insure the deposits at this bank. Now, what does that do to the bank's motivation to be careful about where and how they lend money, or the savings and loan? If they have no risk of having the bank fail because the government is there with its safety net, then there's no reason for them not to lend at a radical rate. And that, in turn, creates greater demand for people who will borrow, which creates greater demand for people who will save. So your costs to lend go down, your costs to get the money to lend go up, because you've got to draw in depositors. And you create a bubble. All because there's no risk there. That's just another way of saying what you subsidize, you get more of. Now, let's consider for a moment the simple economics of a college education. Let's suppose, I don't know that this is necessarily true. I know that there are all sorts of charts and graphs that suggest at least a correlation, if not causation, between graduating from college and greater lifetime earnings. I don't know whether it's true or not. I'm not persuaded that it has to be, though it does seem like accepted common knowledge in our day. You go to college, you get a better job, you make better living, etc., etc. And that makes a college education valuable. And because it's valuable, people are willing to pay a lot to get it. But here's the problem. None of us want to pay more than we have to. And all of us are willing to pay as much as we're able to. Listen carefully. Here's what I'm saying. Let's move it to gas, shall we, since we have that on the table as well. Let me see if I can explain this to you. One of the reasons that gas prices go up so quickly when they do go up is because it's very hard for us to change our behavior quickly. It takes a certain level of thoughtfulness for us to take less trips. It takes an even longer term view to get a car that gets better gas mileage. In between are things like carpooling and such. And out of all of this, it means it's hard for us to change. And so when prices go up, as they have over the last year or so, in a significant way, it causes a great deal of pain. But you keep paying this. Right? You keep paying what you're paying because you feel like, I really need the gas. As painful as it is for me to pay this much, it would be more painful if I couldn't drive to work. What if there was a way that I could get the money to get the gas and not have to have it hurt so bad? Well, now suppose the government comes along and says, look, we understand how important it is for everybody to get to work. We understand how expensive it is. It's very painful. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give everybody a $2 a gallon tax credit. So it's going to work out for you that the price of gas is going to be $2 less than what you're paying now. Is that going to change your behavior? Do you think if the gas companies look out and say, okay, people are willing to pay $4.50 a gallon for gas. They don't like it, they complain about it, they go to the government about it, but they're willing to pay it. Now they've been given $2. What is to stop the gas companies collectively to say, well, we'll just charge $6.50? Because you were willing to pay $4.50, and the government's now paying $2. That makes $6.50. Oh, my stars. Now what do you have? Now you got a problem. Now the government's going to be like, oh, look, our $2 isn't doing any good. We got to give more. You see, the cost of something is what you give up to get it. And when the government comes along and says, here's some help, it doesn't change what you're willing to pay. So what it does is it drives the price up. It drives up demand, which drives up the price. What does that have to do with student loans? Same principle. The exact same principle. If I do the math and I figure out, if I spend $5,000 a semester for 8 semesters, that's $80,000 or $40,000, and I spend that much in order to get a college degree, and it means that over the course of my lifetime, I'm going to average an extra $5,000 a year. In 8 years, I'm going to make up what I spent, and every year after that, I'm going to make more. Then I'm willing to pay $5,000 a semester to go to college. Now, I'd like to go for free. That'd be nice. But I don't have a scholarship, not quite that good at sports or whatever else you can get or academics. So the government comes along and says, look, we know how expensive it is. We know how valuable it is. And by the way, we want you to make more money, so we're going to lend you money to go to school. Now you have $2,000 a semester from the government. It was a stretch and it was a pain when it was $5,000 that you were paying, but now you got this extra $2,000. What's that going to do to the price of the education? It's going to drive it up because you're still willing to give up $5,000 of your own dollars. And so the price of education goes up and up and up, and the government comes with more and more and more. And some people realize, you know what? Those loans, I'm going to be paying interest on those loans. And it's going to cost me this much, and it's going to take me this long. And I'm not doing that. I'm going to choose maybe not to go to college, or I'm going to choose to go to college for less time, or I'm going to choose to go to college more slowly, or I'm going to choose to go to a less expensive college. I'm going to work really hard while I'm there so I can pay as I go. So now you've made the sacrifice. You've worked. You've earned what you earned while you were working. You've paid your own way. You decided not to borrow. And along comes the president saying, I'm going to raise your taxes to alleviate the weight of the debt that these people over here have. These people who maybe worked really hard to get a good education, maybe couldn't have gone to college without that money, or maybe chose a college more expensive, or maybe went where they shouldn't have gone, or maybe majored in something they shouldn't have majored in. Who knows? The point is, you made the decision not to go into debt, and you worked today. Essentially, debt forgiveness, what this is not just kindness. This is not a fulfillment of the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our debts. What this is taxing the ant to pay the grasshopper. It's not only bad economics, it's immoral. It's not only immoral, it's theft. So, don't buy this idea that it's the kind, sweet Democrats who want to alleviate this pain from people that has seemed so unnecessary because we just owe it to ourselves. You wouldn't go and borrow a bunch of money from your neighbor and then say, I'm not going to pay you back. I got a piece of paper here from the government saying I don't have to. That's essentially what they're doing. Friends, if you borrowed the money, pay the money back.
You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. Join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.